Just a couple of updates on Flint. According to MSNBC, the number of Flint residents suing in a class action lawsuit when filed last week was 500. Today it's 1,200. It's going to grow. It's going to grow dramatically, and it should. And I will remind you that the state can stonewall the EPA, the U.S., the feds. But a lot of stuff is going to come out in discovery. If there's a good plaintiff attorney, a lot of stuff is going to come out in this class action. And hopefully they don't settle until there's discovery. On Friday, the state of Michigan responded to a U.S. EPA directive to address, quote, serious and ongoing concerns with Flint's drinking water by questioning whether the federal order is even legal. The Michigan Department of Environmental Quality Director Keith Crail, I don't know his name, in a Friday letter to EPA Administrator Gina McCarthy, disputed whether the EPA has the legal authority to require the state to take actions outlined in the order, saying the state would share those concerns by letter or in person. He said the order was filled with factual omissions and legal errors. She expressed, McCarthy in the letter, concern over continuing delays and lack of transparency. They are already waging their defense. And they should, because this is outrageous. The Daily Beast reported yesterday, 2 days ago, that the emergency manager for Flint, Michigan, appointed by Governor Rick Snyder in 2012, rejected using the city's river as drinking water after consulting with the state's Environmental Protection Agency. This was Ed Kurtz. It was Flint's second emergency manager. In a civil deposition, Ambrose, who was the city's chief financial officer appointed by Ed Kurtz. See how this works, right? There's not a single elected official who's running the city. Or at least elected by residents of Flint. Ambrose testified under oath that emergency manager Kurtz considered a proposal to use the Flint River, discussed the option with the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, and then rejected it. This is a 2014 civil lawsuit brought by retired Flint municipal workers. This was against the state regarding cuts to their health care benefits. So this was before people understood that the water was poison. So you had the Flint River rejected as a permanent water source in 2012. And then it was fine for what they perceived as a limited period of time, a couple of years. So in other words, they said, like, well, if we do this over the course of X many years, infinity, we're going to end up poisoning people. But I think we could probably get away with it if it's just a couple of years. Maybe not that much toxins will, amass in people's bodies. And if it does, we'll be done by then. So then apparently Howard Croft, the former director of public works for Flint, who resigned a couple of months ago, said a couple of months before that the decision to use the river water came directly from the Snyder administration. And we've seen some emails that say, this will blow over by the time we switch. Remember, the first excuse that the Snyder administration used was that Detroit was going to cut them off. But we know that Detroit was not going to cut them off. They were just going to, it was just going to cost Flint, like it had always costed Flint. And this guy, Howard Croft, said the decision was made in the governor's office. So with all that said, with all the lack of transparency, with all the lack of accountability that we know has taken place in Flint, and we should see all the emails from 2012, 2013, all the correspondence, all the directives, how the decision was made, etc. Jeb Bush, this is the guy, right, who has integrity. Said, if the Republican Party has left me, I'm not gonna bend. This guy. This is the guy who's like, whose mom has just endorsed him. Gets on national television with Martha Raddatz and has this to say.
I want to move to some of the domestic issues. Let's talk about what's going on in Flint, Michigan, a city of 100,000 Americans who've been drinking, bathing, brushing their teeth in lead-contaminated water while the government was telling them repeatedly it's safe to use. One estimate says thousands of children were exposed to lead, and that will cause developmental and behavioral issues. They will need millions of dollars of care for the rest of their lives. How is this possible in the United States of America, and who's responsible?
It is horrific, and it is related to the fact that we've created this complex, no responsibility regulatory system where the federal government, the state government, a regional government, local and county governments are all pointing fingers at one another. It is a tragedy, and what we need to do is to have a 21st century system of rules. Whenever you see a problem, it should become public. There should be transparency.
Pause it. Does this guy have any clue what he's talking about, or is he this craven? There was only one regulation that applied to Flint, Michigan. That was whatever Governor Rick Snyder wanted as implemented through the people he appointed to run everything in that city. There was zero transparency. 21st century regulation. What a moron.
Also,
what a craven son of a bitch.
Also, may I add, if that's what he supposedly wants, where's the demand that the governor release all emails and all information available, if that's transparency?
Continue. How much blame does Governor Snyder bear?
We need government leaders to take step. Well, he's taken responsibility, and I admire that. He's not saying that it's someone else's fault. He's rolling up his sleeves and trying to deal with this. But he has a responsibility. He's admitted it, and so does the EPA, and so does local government. No, he needs to do what he's doing, which is to accept responsibility and begin to solve the problem.
You once called him a spectacular governor. Do you still think so?
I think he's been a great governor for Michigan. Michigan was on its knees when he became governor, and he's led to a rebound and forged consensus, and I think he's doing a good job in that regard.
Spectacular governor, not so much anymore, but great for Michigan because those people are really poor. You remember what Barbara Bush said when she toured all the people in that Houston Civic Center? All the refugees from New Orleans? They're doing much better now.
Exactly what she said.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what my mom said is true. I mean, first of all, drinking water isn't beanbag.
That's right.
And if you can't deal with a little bit of lead, I mean, particularly black guys have different genetics and stuff, so they should be tougher. That's why they're good at basketball. Am I right?
Unbelievable. Really just unbelievably crazy.
Michigan was on its knees, and then Governor Snyder forced a lead canister into their mouths.
Well, no, I'm not gonna say that he's a spectacular governor. I'm just gonna say he's good for Michigan now. Like he's just so craven.
He used to be a 10 out of 10. Now I'd say he's more like an 8.5.
Right.
See how I'm shading the margins there?
I'm willing to say 8.7. Like I'm not unmoved by the poisoning of all these children.
If you poison kids, I will knock a percentage point off. If they're white kids, 3.